Please subscribe to hear more Cryptid Tales. If you like the story you heard, give us a thumbs up and feel free to leave us a comment. If you'd like to hear your own cryptid encounter on Cryptid Tales, send us an email at cryptidtalesmail@gmail.com.
I live in North Carolina in small town USA, and I like it. Sidewalks, everyone knows everyone, church on Sundays, eat breakfast at the same diner, one convenience store in town, and one grocery. I love it here. Upon my graduating high school, I married my high school sweetheart from right here in the same town. We had some kids, and now they go to school with the kids of the friends I had in high school. Small town, you live here and you die here. Several years ago, my mother and I took a long weekend to visit family in Tennessee. We invited my sisters and we packed up the car and headed to Rogersville for the 4th of July. When we got there, we learned there was a music festival in town and my female cousins from all over Tennessee had come in too. We were making it a girls' weekend. I am the smallest, standing 5'4" and weighing 90 pounds soaking wet, and everyone thinks Sarah is the small one that can't do anything. Upon arrival, we piled in on Aunt Ruby and took over. There were 7 of us younger women here now, and we tossed her and Mom out of the kitchen and we began to cook. We made a huge meal and took it outside around the pool where they were having a drink. We all ate and laughed and caught up about our kids, our husbands, and families. Had a great time. Then the drinks started and we decided to all have a swim. We lounged around the pool and had a few drinks and enjoyed each other as dusk came upon us. Mother and Aunt Ruby had turned in and most of the cousins and my sisters were inside, and only my cousin Angela were floating in the pool finishing our drinks, listening to our music from the 80s. It all got quiet, and then Angela said, "Oh Lord, do you smell that?" About that time it hit me, the worst smell I'd ever smelled in my life. Wet dog and rotten garbage is all I can say. It was terrible. We figured that it was the well needing bleach in it. There's no city water up there, and on the well, sometimes you have to pour bleach into it. Those from the country know what I mean. Angela decided to go in, and as she got out of the pool, we heard thunk. "What is that?" I said, and then another thunk, and it hit the fence. It was rocks. Someone up in the woods was throwing rocks. Now, my Uncle Jay had gone for the weekend, but my cousin Kevin, which had moved home after his divorce, lived with Aunt Ruby. And yes, his name is Kevin, not Bubba or Cletus or Billy Bob, but Kevin. But we hadn't seen him all day as he was out with his friends. All of a sudden, the jackass named Jack, a real jackass, in the other side of the pasture started raising all kinds of cane and ran to the other end of the field. We were just stunned, but there it was again, a huge thunk and plop. This one landed in the pool, and it was good size, not small. That did it. We both got out and went in. Not long after Kevin and his friends came in, we scolded him for trying to scare us, and he just looked at us like we were crazy. And with everyone there, the subject got lost in the rest of our conversations. The next morning, we all got up and turned on our 80s music wide open and cooked breakfast together. Mom and Aunt Ruby were having a ball, laughing at us and with us girls. Mom said she felt young with all us girls. We took turns getting ready for the day as some of us cleaned up the kitchen, and we started doing different things. Some of us jumped in the pool and laid out in the sun, and some of us decided to ride four-wheelers around the property. Now, Aunt Ruby and Uncle Jay had 40 acres out in the country on the outskirts of Rogersville off 11 West. It was a beautiful place surrounded by fields. He had cows in the fields and leased out to grow hay in. About 70 yards from the back door was the woods, and to the left was an old barn. and beyond that was an old hayfield that was turned and not used this year. On the right was a small church, small country church, lovely place. We laid in the sun and swam some, listened to music, and had fun. That afternoon, it was mine and Gail's turn to ride the four-wheelers. Everyone was giving me a hard time about being so small and would I be able to ride the four-wheeler by myself. Of course, being the independent woman I am, I assured them I could. It was a dare to me at this point. We loaded up on the four-wheelers, and yes, I had some issues, but away we went. Me being the small-town girl, not a city girl, but not a country girl either, I took it slow because I wasn't used to the four-wheeler having its way and me not being in total control. I don't do water slides, roller coasters, or even let someone else drive. I have to be in control of my body and where it is going. I rode through the old hayfield, up the hill behind the house and down again, back through the old field, and bam, there I was, half a mile from Aunt Ruby's house, and the four-wheeler quit on me. I tried to start it. It wouldn't budge. Tried again. No, it wasn't starting. I looked, and damn it, it was out of gas. I was in the woods beyond the field and up some on the hill behind it and in the coverage of the trees. I took out my cell phone and tried to make a call, and of course, no bars, no signal. I tried to move around some and still no signal. My only thing to do was to walk back. I got off the four-wheeler and there I stood in the woods in a bathing suit top, my nice white capris and flip-flops. This was not going to be easy. I stood there and thought about it for a minute, and I could walk down the hill and then into the field. It would be much easier walk, and probably, but going through the mountain would be quicker. So off through the mountain I went. At first I was fine. The birds were singing, and I saw some deer jump and run, and I felt safe. Heck, I didn't know what was out here, and I'm from a housing development with sidewalks after all. After walking just a little while, I felt so alone and hopeless, like it was the end of time and I was the last person on earth. It just hit me out of the blue, I don't know why. Then I felt watched, observed, and maybe followed. Mind you, I had on flip-flops in the woods, and it is not easy to maneuver around. Then it hit me. No more birds, no more squirrels, and no more deer did I see. It was silent out here. That is when I panicked. I sat down and just cried. I came up here to get away from my husband of now 25 years and our home and just be Sarah a little while instead of Honey or Mama and Gigi. I needed a break. I saw something out of the corner of my eye as I walked in a total daze, and I figured it was Kevin jacking with me again. I stopped, put my hands on my hips, and yelled, "Kev, when I get a hold of you, I'm going to wring your neck. You know I need help with the four-wheeler, and you're going to make me walk all the way back, you dipshit." I stood there a minute with no answer, and then I heard a whoop whoop come from the woods. It scared me, and I turned to walk on. Within 3 steps, I fell, twisted my ankle, and fell flat on my butt in my white capris. At this point, I was ready to break. I screamed again, "Kevin, now I am hurt. Come get me and take me back home." Nothing in the woods, not a cricket, not a bird, nothing. My husband and I had a huge fight before I left, and I had just had it. I sat there and started crying, "Kevin, come help me." This time I heard from the woods, "Woo, woo, woo." I realized then it wasn't Kevin. "Who is there?" I screamed. "Woo, woo, woo." I heard again. "Please help me. I am hurt and I need to get back to the house. Eric, Angela, Lisa, anyone out there?" It was getting darker at this time, and I don't mind telling you, I was getting a little bit unnerved. From behind a tree, I saw a face peek out. It looked to have hair, so that was Kevin's friend. It had to be, didn't it? Wes, is that you? But again, I heard the woo, 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 and a long whistle with a high pitch. Again, it peeked out, and I realized it wasn't Kevin, Wes, Angela, or Lisa. It wasn't anyone. Not anyone human, anyway. I sat there crying my eyes out, scared out of my mind as this figure, cinnamon in color, and stepped out and said, woo, woo, woo. While looking at me, I froze. I thought I was dead. She, and yes, I know it was a she because she had breasts. She gingerly stepped completely out of the shadows. I didn't scream, but I did throw my hands to my mouth to muffle anything that might escape and keep from scaring her and me. There she stood, a female Bigfoot. She was about 6 foot tall. Her breasts hung like water balloons, and her face was very defined by a flat, wide nose and deep-set black eyes. But her eyes were gentle. They didn't look mean. I saw care in her eyes. Yes, I know that is crazy, but I did. She nodded and again. Woo, woo, woo. She held out her hands, I guess to show me that they were empty. I scooted back a few scoots, again with the woo, 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 and took a few steps forward. I knew I was dead. My life was going to end here. Never again would I hear, Gigi, I want to spend the night, or Mama, how do you fix this or that? Or, I love you, honey, from my husband of 30 years. It was over for me. She started towards me, and she stopped and stooped down toward the ground and pulled up something, a bunch of leaves off of a plant. She rubbed them together, and I swear she smiled. It's more like she flipped her lip up to expose her teeth, but I didn't feel threatened. She then stopped at a tree and pulled a branch off and stepped closer. I was praying hard, and I couldn't believe this was even happening. This is not real. I must be in so much pain I can't think straight. She came to the edge of the trail and threw them at my feet. Woo, 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 she said as she showed me with her hands to take the leaves and wrap them around my ankle. Well, at this point, I would have eaten them or wrapped them around my head. I didn't care. I just needed to get up and get gone. I wrapped the leaves around my ankle and tied them with a vine she laid at my feet and tried to stand. I couldn't. It hurt bad. I spoke to her and told her I couldn't stand. She turned her head as if she could understand me and looked at me so gently. She took the branch she had thrown at my feet and pushed it to me. Woo, woo, and chatter, chatter, like I was supposed to understand her. Then I got it. It was to lean on. I edged over to the rocks at her feet. She did take a few steps back, and I heard a yell like I have never heard before. I froze. She again flipped her lip and made a huge whoop whoop noise. I sat up on the rock, looking up at her, and she stepped back again. I took the stick and was able to stand. I heard 3 wood knocks and chatter from behind us, and she again chattered. It sounded as like it was Chinese or something, a lot of clicking and wahs at the end of each sound. I knew then that there was more than one. I was terrified again, but she made me feel at ease. She took her hands and made the motion I would to get up, so I stood. She clapped. Yes, I swear she clapped. I said, "Thank you so much," and nodded my head, and she nodded her head back. Then I heard footsteps coming, huge footsteps. She stepped into the woods again, and I heard whoo, whoo again, and I hobbled as fast as I could. I heard her, and I knew it was her because I saw her follow me, almost to the end of the trail. When I got to the end of the trail, I turned and said, "Thank you again," and went on my way. When I got to the house, I told Kevin and Wes to go get the 4-wheeler and take the field. Stay out of the woods. There were holes, and that's how I hurt my ankle. My mom and aunt sat me down, and my aunt said, "City girl, how did you know these leaves would reduce the swelling?" I said I watched TV, and I smiled. Everyone was going their different ways, and I just sat there in shock. The room cleared out, and my Aunt Ruby said, "You met Maddie, huh?" I snapped and looked at her and said, "What did you say?" She smiled and said, "Maddie, our sweet lady of the woods." I said, "You know she is out there? That they are out there?" "Oh yes, Uncle Jay takes things out and leaves them in the woods off the old trail for them. He says they have been here since he was a boy," she said, smiling. "She must have known you were hurt and needed help." I said, "Well, I was crying and yelling for help." We talked on between the two of us, and then in hushed tones as the house filled up again. "Did you meet Max?" she asked. "No, I heard him but didn't see him," I said back. "He isn't as nice as Maddie, I don't think. He is very territorial. He don't like the four-wheelers being ridden up there, but he stands it," she said, smiling. "He stinks, though. She smells like dirt, but he stinks to high heavens. You would have known if he was too close." "Did you see Martin?" "Oh my God, how many are out there, Ruby?" I asked. "Martin is their baby. He is about 4 or 5 feet tall, Uncle Jay says, and is very mischievous. He likes to throw rocks, and he likes to move things in the yard." I couldn't believe it. This was not happening. This was a dream. These things don't exist. "Do other people know about them being out there?" I asked. "Here in the valley they do. This whole valley knows them. They don't bother us, and we don't bother them," Aunt Ruby said, finishing up my foot wrap. We went on and went to the concert and had a good time. We later came back and lounged around the pool that night. After everyone had gone in, I just sat there looking toward the trail, wondering if they were watching us all night. Bright and early the next morning, I was having coffee, and I gathered up some sweets and some apples and loaded them into a bag and hobbled out to the trail. I stood there and shouted, "I wanted to thank you for your help. I appreciate it so much. Thank you, Maddie." As I turned to walk out of the trail, I heard, "Woo, woo." I just smiled and walked out. My aunt and I share that secret. I never told anyone else. They would think I was totally nuts, and heck, you may as well, but there it is. Take it or leave it. I don't ride four-wheelers anymore, even up at Aunt Ruby's, and I don't camp or hike or anything like that. I will stick with facials and getting my nails done. But when I go up to Aunt Ruby's, even to this day, I take snacks and trinkets and stuff. I leave them in the place Maddie helped me. I know she knows they are from me. When I go back before I leave to see if they are gone, they are. Again, there it is. Take it or leave it. I lived in West Tennessee as a boy, Huntington, until moving to Nashville, Tennessee when I was 6. I had an uncle who was a paratrooper and landed in Germany on D-Day. Later in his life, he became a colonel in the National Guard. He was also an expert marksman and taught the Olympic shooting team. Recently, my uncle passed away, but before he did, I got to pay him and my aunt a visit. It was a good visit, and we got to make a trip to Arby's, just him and me in his Cadillac. I will share this story as it was told to me. I don't know exactly when, but I would say it was in the late 70s. The story centers around Reelfoot Lake. It has always been a sportsman paradise for hunting and fishing. There's something very primitive and primordial about that place. There was a friend of my uncle's, probably an old army buddy, who was an avid outdoorsman and marksman. He had gone on a trip to Reelfoot and was planning on staying for several days, which isn't uncommon in itself. Reelfoot isn't very deep, but it is massive, and it's a good place to go if you want to be alone. He was walking towards an area where he was going to hunt, being as quiet as he could. Being totally in camo, he would have been very hard to spot. He had paused to take a rest and have a drink and was sitting on an old stump. Besides the usual noises, he heard something rustling in the tall grass not too far away. He was thinking it was a deer, so he crouched down and crept through the undergrowth towards the sound. He would pause and listen for the sound of something going through the brush. Normally, a deer will stand still and then suddenly snort and run off. Then everything went still. He raised the rifle in case he had to make a quick shot and listened. The only sound was a turtle slipping off into the water. But it was an eerie quiet. He slowly crept in the direction towards a clearing up ahead. As he got towards the clearing, he saw what he thought was a bear at the other end of the clearing. He crouched down and brought his scope up to see what it was. In a minute, a sense of dread came over him because he knew something was terribly wrong. He had never heard of bears in that part of Tennessee. The thing, which can only be described as a monster, slowly stood up. He took the safety off, and they stared at each other in disbelief. He wanted the thing to run away, so he fired a shot in the air. But then the monster took a step toward him and roared like a lion. The monster slowly walked toward him, and that's when he started firing. This monster would fall from the 7.72 ball ammo, but it would get back up. The man fired every round in a 20-round clip, and the monster turned and staggered back into the thick undergrowth. The man turned and ran for a short distance and then walked back to his truck. He sat there trying to come to grips with what had happened, and then the fear came over him, and he started the truck and sped off. As far as I know, he never hunted or fished again. My uncle was a man among men. He was the best, and I miss him terribly. He never told wild tales, and I have the utmost respect for him. I believe somebody knows what these things are, and I wish they would warn people. Somebody's going to stumble across one of these monsters and not have the benefit of army training and equipment. And I believe people will be killed by these things. I pray that one day we will know what these things are and they will warn people that go into the woods.